Hey everyone, welcome to your personalized deep dive. You sent over some excerpts from the audiobook The Highly Sensitive Person by Elaine Aron. And it seems like, you're really interested in this whole idea of high sensitivity. So we're going to dive into that today.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic. And honestly, it's way more common than most people think.
Right. It's not like some, niche thing.
Exactly. Research suggests that it actually affects about 15 to 20% of people.
Wow. That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. And the book starts off with this really compelling story of Kristen.
Oh, yeah. I remember Krista.
She's a college student, and she felt like she was, kind of going crazy.
Yeah.
Because she would have these really intense reactions to things that other people didn't seem to be bothered by at all.
Like what kind of things?
Well, like being in crowded spaces or dealing with strong emotions or even just like loud noises.
Yeah, I can see that.
Those things would just totally overwhelm her.
Like sensory overload.
Exactly. And that's actually a really common experience for highly sensitive people, or HSPs. HSPs. Okay. Yeah, I've heard that term before.
Yeah. So it's like their nervous systems are just wired to process everything much more deeply.
So they're kind of like picking up on all the little details that other people might miss.
Precisely. And that can be both a blessing and a curse, right?
Yeah, definitely a double-edged sword.
Yeah. And to really illustrate this, how differently sensitivity can play out,
Yeah.
the book talks about this case study.
Oh, yeah. The twins.
Yeah, Rob and Rebecca.
Rob and Rebecca. I love that part of the book.
They were like night and day, right?
Totally.
So like right from the moment they were born, their differences were super obvious.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like as a baby, Rob had a really hard time sleeping.
Oh, no.
He startled super easily, and he needed a lot of soothing, like rocking and things like that.
Oh, wow. So he was like a high-needs baby.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And then Rebecca, on the other hand, was like the easy baby. Like she was super calm, adapted to new situations really well, rarely fussy.
Oh, my gosh. What a difference.
Right. And as they got older, those differences just became even more apparent.
In what way?
Well, the book talks about how, as a toddler, Rose was terrified of loud noises, crowds, new experiences in general, and Rebecca was like the opposite.
Fearless.
Yeah, basically. And so it's like this really clear example of how high sensitivity is not just a personality quirk.
Right. It's like deeper than that.
Yeah, it's really rooted in our biology.
Interesting. So it's not something you can just, will yourself out of.
Right. And what's cool is that even though little Rob was more easily overwhelmed, he also started showing those like classic HSP strengths.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, like he had this amazing imagination. He was super artistic, and he's just naturally really empathetic.
Oh, wow. So it's like the sensitivity kind of fuels those strengths in a way.
Exactly. And that's something I think a lot of HSPs can relate to.
Yeah.
It's not all about being overwhelmed. It's also about those incredible gifts that you bring to the table.
Definitely. So if you're listening and you identify as highly sensitive, keep that in mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, to really understand the science behind all this, the book dives into the research of psychologist Jerome Kagan.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of him. What did he study?
So he focused on what he called inhibited children.
Inhibited children. Okay.
Yeah, so he found that around 20% of babies are what he called highly reactive.
Oh, meaning?
Meaning they show these like really clear physical signs of being overstimulated.
Oh, wow. So it's like measurable.
Yeah, exactly. Like their heart rates go up, they produce more stress hormones, like cortisol.
Wow. So it's not just like a feeling, it's like a physiological response.
It really is.
That's fascinating. Okay, so we've got this biological basis for sensitivity.
Yeah.
But how does that actually play out in the brain? Like what's going on up there?
Well, the book talks about two main brain systems that are involved.
Okay, tell me more.
So one is called the behavioral activation system, which basically like our go system.
Like our drive to explore.
Exactly. It pushes us to seek out new things, get excited by novelty, all of that.
Makes sense. And what's the other system?
The other one is the behavioral inhibition system, which you can think of as like the pause system.
Pause.
Yeah, so it's like this internal check mechanism
Interesting.
that makes us kind of stop and assess for potential threats before we jump into something new.
So it's like our internal risk assessor.
Exactly. And for HSPs, this pause system is often working in overdrive.
Ah, so they're constantly scanning for danger, processing all those subtle cues.
Precisely. And that's why they can get overstimulated more easily. It's like their brains are just working overtime.
I can see that. Okay, so we've got these two systems, the go system and the pause system.
Yeah,
And it sounds like the balance between those systems can really influence how sensitive someone is.
absolutely. And that actually leads to the idea that there isn't just one type of HSP.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
So there are different kinds of sensitivity.
Yeah. The book talks about two main types.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me about them.
All right. So the first type has a really strong pause system, but a weaker go system.
So they're more cautious.
Exactly. They're easily overwhelmed by too much stimulation, and they might not be as driven to seek out new experiences.
Like they're content with a quieter life.
Yeah, you could call them the quiet observers of the world.
I like that. And what about the second type?
So the second type is interesting because they have both systems firing strongly.
So they have that strong pause mechanism, but also a strong drive to explore.
Exactly. It's like this constant push and pull between being cautious and wanting to experience new things.
Oh, wow. That sounds kind of exhausting.
It can be,
Mm.
but it also makes them really interesting people.
I bet. So they're like the adventurous explorers.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
So we've got the observer and the explorer, each navigating the world in their own unique way.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that our early childhood experiences can actually shape how our sensitivity develops.
Oh, really? Tell me more about that.
So the book brings in some research on this thing called long-term arousal.
Long-term arousal.
Okay.
That sounds intense.
It's basically a fancy way of describing how our bodies respond to stress over an extended period of time.
So not just like a quick burst of adrenaline, it's more like a chronic state of stress.
Right. And for HSPs whose systems are already wired for deeper processing, this long-term arousal can be really challenging.
Because it's like they're already on high alert.
Exactly. And that's where the concept of attachment comes in.
Okay. So how does attachment relate to all of this?
Well, basically the way we're cared for as infants can have a huge impact on how we manage stress later in life.
Like if we had secure attachment, we're more likely to be able to regulate our emotions and handle stress better.
Exactly. And for HSPs, that's especially important.
Makes sense. And what about people who didn't have secure attachment?
Well, for them, managing that long-term arousal can be a lot tougher.
Because they might not have developed those healthy coping mechanisms.
Right. And the book talks about the work of psychologist Megan Gunner.
Oh, what did she find?
So she found that for HSPs who had secure attachment, their levels of cortisol, which is that stress hormone we talked about,
Yeah.
they were actually lower.
Interesting. So secure attachment can actually buffer the effects of stress.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. And, on the flip side, insecure attachment can actually make things worse.
Because it can lead to more anxiety and difficulty regulating emotions.
Exactly. And that can just create this vicious cycle of stress and overarousal.
Wow. This is all making me think about the whole nature versus nurture debate.
Yeah. It's definitely a complex interplay of both.
So it's not just about our genes, it's also about our early experiences.
Absolutely. And speaking of different perspectives on sensitivity, the book also brings in the work of Carl Jung.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of him. Wasn't he a psychoanalyst or something?
Yeah, he was a pioneer in depth psychology. And he was actually highly sensitive himself.
Oh, wow. So he knew what he was talking about.
He did. And he believed that HSPs are just much more deeply affected by their experiences.
Hmm.
Especially those early childhood experiences we just talked about.
Interesting.
And he also saw them as being more in touch with their unconscious mind.
Their unconscious mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that deeper well of thoughts, feelings, and motivations that we're not always aware of.
So it's like HSPs are constantly absorbing and processing information on this deeper level.
Exactly.
Right.
Which can be both a source of wisdom and a potential source of difficulty.
Right. Because it's like you're more sensitive to everything, both the good and the bad.
Yeah. And Jung actually had a really positive view of HSPs.
Really?
Yeah. He saw them as like educators and promoters of culture.
Wow. That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah. He didn't see sensitivity as something to be fixed or overcome.
But as a valuable trait that can enrich the world.
Exactly. And I think that's such an important message to remember, especially in a world that often values, extroversion and toughness above all else.
Definitely. It's like HSPs are here to remind us of the importance of empathy and depth and connection.
I love that. And in the next part of our deep dive, we're actually going to explore some more practical guidance on how to thrive as an HSP.
I can't wait. Let's do it. Welcome back. So we've talked a lot about the science and like the theory behind high sensitivity, but now I'm kind of curious to get into the practical stuff. Like what does it actually look like to, thrive as an HSP in the real world?
Well, one of the key themes that really resonated with me from the book is this idea of treating your highly sensitive body with the same care and attention that you would give to a sensitive infant.
Well, that's a really good analogy. I like that.
Right, because think about it. Both infants and, those of us with sensitive systems, we thrive on predictability.
Yeah, we don't like surprises.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We can get overwhelmed super easily by too much stimulation. And we need gentle care, clear boundaries, and lots of downtime to recharge.
Oh, that's so true. It's like, you wouldn't force a tired baby to stay awake in a noisy environment. Okay, so
Exactly.
you wouldn't push yourself to endure like a crazy social gathering when you're already feeling drained.
Right. It's all about honoring your limits and listening to your body's cues.
Yeah.
And recognizing that needing more downtime than others isn't a flaw.
Right.
It's just part of who you are.
It's like part of your wiring.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just like a baby's needs should be met with, like, responsiveness and care,
Yeah.
so too should the needs of your sensitive body. You wouldn't ignore a baby's cries for attention.
Right.
So why would you ignore your own body's signals?
That's a good point. It's like tuning into those subtle messages your body's sending you
Yeah.
and giving it what it needs to really function at its best.
I love that.
Mm.
And, this whole idea of listening to your body and honoring its needs,
Yeah.
it actually ties in really beautifully with the concept of attachment that we were discussing earlier.
Oh, right. The idea that our early childhood experiences, especially those relationships with our caregivers, can really impact how we relate to our own needs and emotions as adults.
Exactly. It's like just as a baby develops an attachment style with its primary caregiver,
Yeah.
we also develop this like internalized sense of how to relate to our own bodies and emotions.
So if you had a secure attachment in childhood,
Yeah.
you're more likely to have that like secure and trusting relationship with your own body as an adult.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know how to soothe yourself when you're feeling stressed, set healthy boundaries when you need space, and trust your intuition when you're making decisions.
So it's like you have this strong internal foundation of self-care.
Exactly.
Mm.
But of course, not everyone has that experience of secure attachment.
Right. Sadly not.
And for those who experience insecure attachment,
Yeah.
where those early relationships were, maybe less consistent or even unpredictable,
Yeah.
things can be a little bit more challenging.
Oh, I bet. So how does insecure attachment show up when it comes to self-care for HSPs?
Well, if your early environment was kind of neglectful or even traumatic,
Yeah.
you might have developed like an anxious or an avoidant attachment style.
Okay.
And these can manifest in some pretty distinct ways when it comes to taking care of yourself.
Like how?
Well, someone with an anxious attachment style, for example,
Yeah.
might be super hyper aware of every little twinge or sensation in their body,
Oh, wow.
constantly worrying about their health, seeking reassurance from others.
So it's like they're always on high alert, even when it comes to their physical well-being.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, someone with an avoidant attachment style might go to the other extreme.
Like ignoring their needs completely.
Yeah, pushing themselves beyond their limits, dismissing any signs of distress.
Wow. So they're just kind of shutting down those signals.
Right. And if these patterns go unexamined,
Yeah.
they can really lead to this disconnect between the mind and body.
That's so interesting.
But the good news is that, these patterns can shift
Oh, good.
with awareness and effort.
Like how?
Well, therapy, mindfulness practices, and self-compassion can be super helpful.
Yeah. Those are all great things.
They can help heal those early wounds and develop a more secure relationship with yourself.
So it's not about blaming your past,
No,
but understanding how it might be influencing your present.
exactly. And finding ways to move forward.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about managing over-arousal, which I know is a huge challenge for many HSPs.
Yeah, for sure. What are some concrete strategies that people can start using today? Well, one of the most important things is to identify your triggers.
Like what sets you off?
Yeah. What are those specific situations, environments, or even sensory experiences that tend to send you into over-arousal?
So if you know that being in large crowds is a trigger,
Yeah,
you might try to avoid those situations.
exactly. It's about becoming aware of what drains your energy
Yeah.
and making conscious choices to protect your well-being.
So being proactive.
Right. And once you know what your triggers are, you can start to build in strategies to manage them.
Like what kind of strategies?
Well, one really important tip is to prioritize downtime.
Oh, yeah. Downtime is essential.
It is. And create a calming routine that works for you.
So that could be anything from like meditation to taking a walk in nature to just having a quiet evening at home.
Exactly. It's about building in those moments of peace and stillness.
Love it.
It's not about being lazy.
Right.
It's about giving your brain and body a chance to process and integrate all the information they've taken in throughout the day.
It's like hitting the reset button on your nervous system. Exactly.
I love that. What about sleep? I've heard that HSPs can be more sensitive to sleep disturbances.
Oh, that's definitely true. Sleep is essential for everyone.
Yeah.
but especially for HSPs.
So what can people do to improve their sleep?
Well, establishing a consistent sleep routine and creating a restful sleep environment is key.
So like limiting screen time before bed, keeping your bedroom cool and dark.
Exactly. Avoiding caffeine and alcohol in the evening.
Oh.
All those things that help signal to your body that it's time to wind down.
Yeah, it's about creating that sanctuary for your sensitive nervous system to recharge.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of movement and exercise.
Well, that's interesting. But wouldn't exercise be more stimulating?
Yeah.
Especially for someone who is already easily overstimulated?
It can be, which is why it's important to find the right type of movement for your body.
Okay, so not like a crazy intense workout.
Right. More like gentle yoga, tai chi, or even just a walk in nature.
That makes sense. It's about finding that sweet spot. Exactly. Where you're moving your body without pushing yourself over the edge. And remember, self-care isn't just about those like physical things you do.
Right.
It's also about your mindset.
Oh, yeah. Your mental and emotional well-being.
Exactly. Cultivating self-compassion, practicing mindfulness,
Hmm.
challenging that negative self-talk.
Yeah.
All of that is so important.
It can make a world of difference. It's about being kind to yourself, recognizing that you're doing the best you can,
Yeah.
and not beating yourself up for needing more downtime or feeling overwhelmed in certain situations.
Right. It's about giving yourself permission to be human.
Exactly. And I think that leads perfectly into our next topic,
Oh, which is?
exploring those unique gifts that HSPs bring to the table.
Yes. I love this part. We've talked a lot about the challenges.
Yeah.
But now let's shift our focus to the positive.
I'm all about that. So what are some of those amazing strengths that the book highlights?
I'm ready to hear about the superpowers of being an HSP.
All right. Well, for starters, HSPs are often incredibly creative and imaginative.
Oh, yeah. I can see that.
They have this rich inner world.
Yeah.
They're able to see things from multiple perspectives, and they think outside the box, which can lead to some really innovative ideas and solutions.
It's like they have this built-in ability to see the world from a different angle.
Exactly. And that creativity isn't limited to just artistic pursuits.
Right.
It can show up in all areas of life.
Like problem solving at work or even just the way you connect with other people.
Absolutely. You're bringing that sensitivity, that depth of perception to everything you do.
So it's not just about being a painter or a musician.
Right.
It's about bringing that creative spark to everything you do.
I love that. What other strengths come to mind?
Well, we can't talk about the strengths of HSPs without talking about empathy,
Oh, for sure.
which is often considered like a hallmark of high sensitivity.
Absolutely. HSPs have this profound capacity to understand and share the emotions of others,
Yeah.
which makes them incredibly compassionate and
Yeah.
supportive of friends, partners, and family members.
They're the ones who are always there to listen, to offer a shoulder to cry on, to just be present with you in those difficult moments.
Yes. And that ability to truly connect with others on such a deep level is priceless.
It really is. And in a world that can feel increasingly disconnected and self-focused,
Yeah,
that capacity for empathy is more important than ever.
I agree. It's what helps us to build bridges of understanding and create a more compassionate society.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that these strengths,
Yes.
while often innate to HSPs,
Yeah,
can also be cultivated and nurtured over time.
that's so true. It's like any skill or talent.
Yeah.
The more you practice and the more you lean into those strengths, the stronger they become.
So if you're listening and you're just starting to understand your own high sensitivity,
Yeah,
know that you have these incredible strengths within you.
absolutely. It's about learning to embrace and celebrate those qualities, to see them as the superpowers they truly are.
I love that. This is so inspiring. It's like a whole new way of looking at sensitivity. It's not just about the challenges.
It's about the incredible potential that comes with it.
Exactly. And we'll continue exploring that potential in the final part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. I can't wait.
Ah.
Okay, we're back. And, we've talked about like a lot of different aspects of high sensitivity,
We have.
the science, the practical tips for navigating the world. But before we wrap up, I really want to circle back to those strengths that HSPs have.
Yes, I love that.
Because it feels like, we're shifting from just surviving to actually thriving.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what this last part of the book focuses on.
Really?
Yeah, it's about kind of flipping the script on sensitivity.
Oh, how so?
Well, instead of seeing it as a problem that needs to be fixed,
Yeah,
it's about embracing it as a source of like real power and potential.
I love that. So how does the book help us actually see sensitivity as a strength instead of a weakness?
Well, it highlights those specific strengths and talents that are often found in HSPs.
Like what kind of strengths?
Well, we talked about creativity earlier.
But I think it's worth diving a little deeper into how that actually shows up.
Okay. Let's do it.
So HSPs are constantly taking in information on this deeper level,
Right.
processing those nuances and subtleties that other people might miss.
They're paying attention to all the little things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And all of that depth of processing, it can lead to like a more vivid and intricate inner world,
Oh, wow.
which is like a breeding ground for creative expression.
So it's like having this constant stream of inspiration flowing through you.
Yeah, exactly. And this creativity isn't just limited to like artistic stuff.
Okay.
It can show up in, problem solving at work
Uh-huh.
or the unique ways that you connect with people.
Yeah.
You're bringing that sensitivity, that depth of perception to everything you do.
That's so cool. So it's like seeing the world through a different lens.
I love that. And speaking of seeing the world through a different lens,
Okay.
let's talk about intuition.
Yes. Intuition. I'm so fascinated by this.
Me too. So HSPs, they're super attuned to their own feelings
Right.
and the feelings of others.
Yeah.
And they're constantly picking up on these subtle cues and energy shifts.
It's like they have a sixth sense.
Exactly. And that can give them a strong sense of knowing or sensing things.
Even if they can't really explain it.
Right. Exactly. And it's important to note that intuition isn't about like predicting the future,
Okay.
but it can be a really valuable tool for navigating life's complexities.
So it's more about trusting your inner wisdom,
Yeah, those subtle feelings and insights that come from a deeper place.
like your gut feeling.
Exactly. And for HSPs who are already so in tune with their inner world,
Yeah,
developing that intuition can be incredibly empowering.
that makes sense. And of course, we can't forget about empathy,
Oh, of course not.
which we've talked about quite a bit. But why is empathy considered such a hallmark of high sensitivity?
Well, HSPs, they just have this profound capacity to understand and share the emotions of other people.
Yeah, they feel things so deeply.
They do. And that depth of feeling allows them to connect with others on a really deep level.
It's like they can step into someone else's shoes and truly feel what they're going through.
Exactly.
Mm.
Which makes them incredibly compassionate and supportive.
Amazing friends and partners and
Yeah,
family members.
For sure. And in a world that can often feel driven by competition and individualism,
Yeah,
that capacity for empathy is such a gift.
it really is. It's like HSPs are here to remind us that connection is important.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that these strengths,
Yeah.
while often innate to HSPs,
Yeah.
they can also be cultivated and strengthened over time.
Okay.
So the more you practice, the more you nurture those qualities, the more they'll flourish.
That's great advice. So if you're listening and you're just starting to, understand your own sensitivity,
Yeah,
know that you have these incredible strengths inside of you.
absolutely. It's all about learning to embrace those qualities.
Yeah, celebrate them.
Yes, see them as the superpowers they truly are.
I love that. This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I
Okay.
feel like I have a whole new understanding of high sensitivity.
I'm glad to hear that. And remember, this is just the beginning.
Right. There's so much more to explore.
Exactly. The book we've been talking about, The Highly Sensitive Person,
Yeah.
it's a great resource for continuing to learn and grow. And there are tons of other resources out there too.
Definitely keep learning, keep exploring.
And most importantly, keep embracing the power of your sensitivity.
I love that. Thank you so much for this amazing deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. We hope you found this valuable and insightful.
We did.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep embracing the amazing person you are.